What up guys, SuperMetal983 here bringing us another album review, and this time we've got some really hard hitting death metal for you to check out today. But yeah, I'm going to be reviewing the new album for the band Ingested, entitled Ashes Lie Still. This is going to be released on November 4th through Metal Blade Records, and it is their debut album under that label. Now, if you're not too familiar with Ingested, I'll be very surprised if you've been following my channel, especially for a while. They are a three-piece death metal band hailing from the UK, specifically Manchester, or Slamchester for those who aren't familiar. And yeah, these guys, you should pretty much know by now. They are my favourite band of all times, and I've been following these guys for quite some time. I've reviewed near enough every release on the channel, and as time's gone on, they have evolved into such an absolute powerhouse in not just the UK extreme metal scene, but the world metal scene. They have grown so much over the past couple of years, and it's quite scary, to be honest, but I am so happy for the guys, and now begins the new chapter on Metal Blade Records. Now, if you haven't checked it out before, make sure you check out my last review of their last album, which was on Unique Leader Records in 2020, which was called Where Only Gods May Tread, which is this one here. Which this one saw, in my personal opinion, it saw a change in the band's sound, and the next chapter, the next evolvement of the Ingested sound, because it was less slammy. It was more death metal oriented, and it definitely had a bit of a different flavour and dynamic approach to it. And for all, even though it sounds like Ingested, you can see that it does sound like them, but they are definitely pushing their envelope and changing up their sound to a more dynamic, more intense sort of, less blistering sort of approach, but more going for real hard-hitting riffs and just overall more, I would say, going for a more darker sort of sound on this album. And since then, this album I do listen to quite a bit, because it does bring a different taste to the Ingested sound, but not saying that it's a bad thing, because it really shows that the band can progress more than just being another slam band in the scene, shall we say. But this album, if you haven't checked it out, make sure you do so. And they also released a remix and remastered version of their debut demo on Unique Leader, and also a complete re-recorded version of the Surreption 2 Redux, I believe it was called entirely. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that version has grown to become one of my favourite go-tos at the moment, because I just think this overall sound just sounds more massive and just sounds like a vast improvement on that the Surreption. Even though Surreption, it was my album of the year back in 2011, it was nice to hear it in a absolute, just more skull-crushing sound and more crisper sound. So yeah, so and then the band announced, I believe it was in 2021, they announced that they had signed to Metal Blade Records, and they were going to be releasing a new album. They released a single which was called Rebirth, which absolutely incredible song, really enjoyed that. And then they announced that they were going to release a new album called Ashes Lie Still on Metal Blade Records in 2022. So yeah, let's get into this album, because I know you're excited to hear my opinion on this. So yeah, it's 10 tracks and runs around 45 minutes in length, and this, in my opinion, is Where Only Gods May Tread's next evolution. Like, the evolution of Ingested is quite inspiring to listen to, in my personal opinion, because I always remember them as being like a real hard hitter, slam band on the debut, which is my second favourite album of all times. And then they're evolving their sound into a more dynamic sort of approach, but still keeping the slammier elements, the brutal aspect of it. Whereas it feels like this chapter of Ingested is a more darker, more, I would say a little bit more eased back sort of feel to it, and going for a more, okay, what is going to transition live, what's going to feel good to play, and it doesn't affect the record or the band in any way, in my personal opinion, because this album, to me, is the evolution of Where Only Gods May Tread, because it is, in my opinion, one of the best sounding Ingested albums we have had so far. Like, production wise, I can't fault this record, because, and especially as the band's grown, they have obviously lost members over the years, and they're now a three-piece with Sean, Lynn and Jay continuing the band and changing up their sound and adding more 8-string elements on there, going for a more even heavier sort of groove death metal sort of approach. That's the kind of influence that I'm hearing here. And on this album, it definitely shows what they can do with less is more sort of thing. Like, the whole past discography of Ingested has been very blast oriented, very heavy picking, slam oriented, whereas these two records in particular, and especially Ashes Lie Still, it can show what Ingested can do besides a slam oriented record. Like, this, in my opinion, is one of the most full and fun sounding Ingested albums that I have heard, like, in their discography. Like, it's just, listen to it, it just sounds very professional and still very brutal in its delivery. Like, especially on the first song, Ashes Lie Still, which was the first official track that we heard from the album, because Rebirth, I believe, is a bonus track on this album, which is like a Redux version, which it wasn't in the promo, but when the CD copy eventually arrives, I will check that out. But Ashes Lie Still comes in with this kind of blissful sort of dark, sort of ambient-y sort of intro with Julia Frau, I believe how it's pronounced, I'm not entirely sure, and creating these really eerie, more darker, blackened sort of feels in there, just to really set a more dreary mood to it. And it kind of reminds us, in a sense, that song of, what was the name of the song off the top of my head? Another Breath, which was the one that featured Kurt Weinstein of Crowbar. I was hoping they would transition that a little bit more into this record, like the more slower tempo, more dreary sound. Not exactly, like a bit of slight doom influence on there. Like that sort of vibe I was hoping for. But this is definitely a more intense, more groove-orientated record, but it is still the Ingested sound of deathcore and death metal in there. But Ashes Lie Still is the perfect representation of the modern Ingested sound. Like, big atmosphere, big riffs, and then really intense vocal delivery, which I will get to Jay's vocals in a little bit. And then Shadows in Time, another incredible song on this record that they released. Tides of Glass, another incredible song. I really will want to say the drum work on this album, the production behind the drums, is easily my favourite drum production of Ingested so far, because everything sounds crisp, everything sounds really dynamic, and but it also sounds pretty massive. Like, you can hear every cymbal hit and every accent, like the tones that they're going for, because I can hear a lot more. For some reason, when I listen to Ingested, I can hear more little details here and there, like the atmosphere that the cymbals create, and the snare tones, all that. I can hear all those minute details because I've been such a follower of Ingested for many years. And the overall drum sound is absolutely massive, and it sounds so well mixed in here. Like, it sounds absolutely incredible. And then the guitar work as well. The guitar work is absolutely incredible, and the standout features on here that you would expect from Ingested, like the drop A stuff, where it's like really heavy oriented, very riff heavy and stuff, is really fucking stand out, as you would expect with Sean's writing. He is such a great songwriter, and he can really create some real menacing, but also what should I say, menacing sort of dark, gloomy elements, but he still knows how to pack a punch and really get the real bite in his guitar tone. Like, it really sounds absurdly crushing, this album. Like as I said, the overall tone on this album is just absolutely incredible. Like, it really sounds thick, it sounds punchy, but it doesn't sound quite as boomy as I was expecting, but it definitely adds to the overall sound, especially on the 8-string stuff, where it's very low tune, and I want to feel chunk coming from those 8-string riffs, because I really feel like if you're gonna play an 8-string, I want to hear some cool riffs. Like, I love down tempo and like the heavier stuff that's in 8-string tune, where it's just like diminished, heavy, slammy stuff. I love that shit. But I like to see what people can utilize with an 8-string when it comes to actual mint riffs and just chunk and just makes you want to headbang riffs. And that is a perfect example on my favourite song on this record, which is From Hollow Words, which is the 5th track on this album, which is becoming one of my favourite songs of 2022. I absolutely love the overall pace of that record. It's very up-tempo. You can imagine a lot of circle pits going in the horizon of, like, say, a fucking Download or Whack-In. You can see like 3 or 4 circle pits going absolutely nuts during that song, but it's still a headbanger of a song, and I absolutely love the dynamic approach between the two vocalists, which I'll get to in a second, and it just creates this really nice contrast in there. And then another song which really surprised me when I saw the track list, which is All I've Lost, which features Matt Heafy of Trivium. Now, he's been making a lot of guest appearances as of late, and I kind of like that, because he's been placed on like some records of bands that you would think like they're pretty small, like compared to the likes of Trivium, and it's nice to see that Matt's like helping them out, should we say. But his scream vocals are so unique, and along with Jay's like very diabolical, you know, grim as fuck, intense vocal delivery, to have Matt's kind of like aggressive sort of mid-tone screams that are very gritty and raspy. On top of that, it really creates that unique contrast, which I'll get to Sven's vocals in a second. And then you get to the song that really did stand out when I was listening to this album just before I did this video, which is Echoes of Hate. Now, that one, I would say, is definitely harkening back to older times of Ingested. It kind of reminds us a little bit of The Level Above Human and The Architect of Extinction, kind of like the more slammy oriented, and even maybe a little bit of Erotic Depravity, that single a little bit scattered on there. It really says like, it says to me like when you're listening to this album, it's showing a new chapter of Ingested, them presenting themselves as this is what we fucking sound like. We're still brutal, we're still heavy, but we can still slam. And they did that on the last album with I think it was Impending Dominance. That's I believe it was the first single that released off that. Still had that sort of slammy sound, the Ingested sound, like as I said, relating to those two albums that I mentioned. But the overall vibe on that song, like the slowed down slammy bits, just sound absolutely incredible, if you ask me. And then I'll actually quickly go back onto it. Sven of Aborted, his guest spot on From Hollow Words. It's really more of a duet, that song, and it really, really shows a lot of contrast, especially from 1 to 4. You've got Ingested doing their thing of brutality, and Jay just doing his menacing sort of vocals. Now, I will say his tone has improved so much over the past 2 albums. Like, his dynamical approach and just the tones overall just sound a little bit more thicker, a little bit more cleaner as well. Just the delivery, you can feel. It's he's put a lot of work into his vocal delivery and just making sure he can get a lot of pronunciation, but while still being brutal as fuck. It kind of shows his growth as a musician as you listen from Surpassing the remix, remaster, whichever one you want to go through, all the way up to now. You can see he has pushed his delivery, and there's even moments where I don't think he's done them a lot on previous records, but he's doing like little pig squeal moments on this record, which really adds a little bit over, because I've seen him do it live quite a few times, and it really adds to the overall sound of it. Shows that Ingested can throw those things on a record as well, and it really shows what they're capable of. And I will also say Sean, he does a couple of spots across this entire album as well. he's got a different vocal dynamic as well, which is more I don't even know how to describe it. It's like very low, but kind of like has a hardcore death metal sort of. The only way I could describe it is kind of like Dom from Waking the Cadaver, like that sort of tone, like not so much the inhale breeze or anything like that, just the the monotone sort of low vocals that Dom does. That's the kind of vibe he goes for, and it really adds to a real dynamic to this overall record. It shows like the contrast. Like I know their former guitarist Sam used to do vocals as well, and that had a different contrast. So to hear just Jay and Sean bouncing back and forth throughout this entire record, but then Sven and Matt and Julia adding their flavour on top of that, it just makes for a really interesting vocal delivery, and it definitely represents itself. Like we had Vincent from the Acacia Strain, we had Kirk, as I said, from Crowbar, and I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, but Matty, I think his name is, of Kubla Khan on the last record, and we've got these guest spots on here. It shows that they know how to pick out their guest spots. They don't just pick, we know you, let's put you on a track. It's more like, we have a perfect track for you, here we go. And it really makes the listen just really a really good experience. Like this album is definitely a very good experience to listen to, and the overall vibe that I'm getting for this, I'm definitely feeling this record a little bit more than I was Where Only Gods May Tread, because like I'm not massive on changing sounds and stuff, but when it's done in the right way, or it's you know, it shows what the band can do, that's when I'm interested in it. And Ingested, changing up their sound on Where Only Gods May Tread, kind of showcase what they can do, changing up their sound, and I was really on board with it. But this next album, Ashes Light, still is the epitome of what, in my opinion, that album showcase what Where Only Gods May Tread showcase what they were going for. Ashes Lie Still shows they've nailed it. They've absolutely nailed it on the head, and it sounds absolutely incredible, especially for a debut album under Metal Blade Records. It fits right in with their roster, and it shows that they are ready for the next chapter. Like, we're changing our sound, this is our new sound, and we've got a new label backing us, let's conquer the world. And they are doing that with this album. I mean, they're doing it in America with that Lorna Shore tour, which is naughty, and fucking sold out. That is absolutely mega. But honestly, I think this album is absolutely incredible, and it's such a joy to listen to. As being a massive Ingested fan as I am, I absolutely love this record, and it's cranked its way up my favourite albums of their discography. I can't stop listening to it, and I absolutely love it. But my favourite song, as I said, from Hollow Earth, but I would also say Ashes Lie Still and Echoes of Hate, but I'll also put in All I've Lost, because that is an absolutely amazing song as well. They'll all be linked down below. It's an absolutely incredible album. Make sure you check it out. There'll be links down below of where you can check out this album and pre-order it, or even order it. It'll be all down there. And also From Hollow Words is in my Riffs for Days playlist, which you can check out down below on Spotify. Make sure you give it a follow and what have you. For an overall score though, I'm going to give this a solid 9 out of 10. I know I've been giving high scores recently, but I've been listening to some really good shit, and when I want to talk about good shit, I get behind me camera, get in front of me camera to talk about it. So I absolutely love it. Ingested's new album is absolutely incredible. Make sure you check it out. It's fantastic. But yeah, I'll see you until next video, and remember, stay metal, and I'll see you later.